He had been trying to grow his channel for many months, but nothing seemed to work the way he expected. Every day he would sit in front of his computer, carefully edit his videos, choose the best clips, and upload them with hope in his heart. But when he checked the views, the numbers stayed disappointingly low. Some videos barely crossed a few dozen views, and even the ones he thought were his best barely reached a small audience. It started to feel like no matter how much effort he put in, it was not enough. At first, he told himself that success takes time. He believed that if he stayed consistent, things would eventually improve. So he kept uploading regularly. He tried different topics, different styles of editing, and even changed the timing of his uploads. Still, the results did not change much. Slowly, that confidence began to turn into frustration. He started wondering if people were even seeing his videos at all. One evening, after uploading another video that received almost no attention, he sat back in his chair and stared at the screen. The room was quiet, except for the faint sound of his computer fan. He opened his analytics page again and again, hoping to see some improvement. But nothing had changed. It felt like he was shouting into an empty space where nobody was listening. That moment made him question everything he was doing. Instead of giving up, he decided to look deeper into what successful creators were doing differently. He spent hours watching videos, reading tips, and studying how titles were written. He noticed something interesting. Many videos with similar content had different levels of success, and sometimes the difference was very small. It was not always about better editing or better ideas. Sometimes it was just how the title was written. This observation made him curious. He started researching more about search optimization and how small changes in wording could affect visibility. That is when he came across a simple idea that caught his attention. The idea was not complicated at all. It suggested that instead of changing an entire title, sometimes you only need to replace one keyword with a synonym while keeping everything else the same. At first, he thought it was too simple to make any real difference. It sounded almost too easy to be true. Still, he could not ignore it. He kept thinking about it for the rest of the day. He realized that sometimes small changes can have unexpected results, especially in how people search for content. Different people use different words, even if they mean the same thing. That could be the reason why some videos reach more viewers than others. This idea stayed in his mind until he finally decided to test it himself. He went back to one of his old videos that had not performed well. He looked at the title carefully and chose one word that he could replace with a synonym. He did not change anything else, not the thumbnail, not the description, nothing. Just one small change in the title. After making the edit, he paused for a moment before saving it. It felt like a very small action, but he had a strange feeling that it might matter more than it seemed. Once the change was done, he uploaded another video using the same approach again. He decided to give this method a fair chance before judging it. Even though he did not expect instant success, he felt a small sense of hope that things might slowly start to shift. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he had discovered something worth trying instead of just guessing blindly. He did not know it yet, but this small experiment would slowly begin to change the way he looked at content creation. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. There was no special reason, but his mind kept going back to the small change he had made the night before. It felt strange how something so simple could stay in his thoughts for so long. Before even getting out of bed properly, he reached for his phone and opened his video analytics. At first, nothing looked different. The numbers were almost the same as before. For a brief moment, he felt that familiar disappointment again. It was the same feeling he had experienced many times before, like expecting a door to open and finding it still locked. He almost closed the app and went back to his routine without thinking more about it. But then he noticed something small. One of the videos he had changed was showing slightly more impressions than usual. It was not a big jump, not something that would normally make someone excited. But for him, even a small change stood out clearly because he was used to seeing almost no movement at all. That tiny difference made him pause. He sat up properly and looked at the screen more carefully. He refreshed the page once, then twice, just to make sure it was real. The numbers were still not huge, but they were different enough to catch his attention. Something was happening, even if it was very small. He tried to stay calm. He did not want to get overly excited about something that might just be random. Still, he could not ignore the possibility that the small change in the title might actually be working. He remembered the idea again, the one about replacing just a single keyword with a synonym. At the time, it had sounded too simple. Now, it suddenly felt worth paying attention to. Later that day, he spent more time observing his videos instead of uploading new ones. He opened each one carefully and compared the performance before and after the change. In some videos, there was no difference at all. But in a few cases, he noticed a slight improvement in how often they were appearing in search results or recommendations. It was not dramatic, but it was consistent enough to make him think deeper. He started to realize something important. Online platforms were not always about big changes. Sometimes even a small shift in wording could affect how people discovered content. Different viewers search using different terms, and even a single word change could connect to a different group of people. This idea slowly started to make sense to him in a practical way, not just in theory. Still, he did not fully trust it yet. He knew that one small improvement could also be coincidence. So instead of making assumptions, he decided to test it more carefully. He picked another older video and made the same kind of change. Again, he only replaced one keyword with a synonym and left everything else untouched. After a few days, he began to treat the small change as a proper experiment instead of a random idea. He stopped guessing and started observing more carefully. Every morning, he would check his channel first thing after waking up, not in a rush way, but with attention to details. He wanted to understand what was really happening behind the numbers. At first, the results were still inconsistent. Some videos showed a small improvement, while others stayed exactly the same. There were moments when he felt confused again, like maybe he was just imagining patterns that were not really there. But instead of stopping, he decided to stay patient and continue testing. He went back to his older videos one by one. He carefully looked at each title and thought about which word could be changed without affecting the meaning. He was not trying to rewrite everything anymore. He was focusing only on one small keyword at a time, just like the idea suggested. This made the process much simpler than before. As he kept doing this, something interesting started to happen. A few videos began to slowly pick up more views than they had in weeks. It was not sudden growth, but more like a steady movement. A video that was once ignored started getting a few more clicks each day. Another video started appearing slightly more in search results. These changes were small, but they were noticeable enough for him to take seriously. He started comparing the videos more deeply. He would open two similar videos and check how different titles affected their reach. He noticed that sometimes a single word made a difference in how people search for it. For example, one word might be more commonly used by viewers, while another word meant the same thing but was searched less. That small difference changed everything in visibility. This realization made him more careful with his choices. He no longer picked synonyms randomly. He began thinking about how an average viewer might search for content. He imagined different people typing different words for the same idea. This helped him understand that content creation was not only about making videos, but also about connecting with how people think and search. Even though the progress was still slow, his mindset had changed. Earlier, he used to feel frustrated quickly when things did not work. Now, he felt more patient. He started seeing each video as part of a bigger learning process instead of judging it immediately. This shift helped him stay consistent without feeling disappointed all the time. One evening, he noticed something that made him pause for a moment. A video he had updated a few days ago was suddenly getting more impressions than expected. It was not viral or anything close to that, but it was clearly performing better than before. He checked again just to be sure, and the numbers were still rising slowly. That small improvement gave him more confidence in the method he was testing. It was not about luck anymore. It felt more like understanding how small adjustments could slowly shape results over time. He realized that success online was not always about big changes or dramatic strategies. Sometimes it was about small improvements done consistently. He also began to notice another important thing. The same idea did not work equally for every video. Some topics responded better to keyword changes, while others showed almost no difference. This taught him that no single trick could guarantee success. Instead, it was about learning patterns and adjusting based on what worked. Instead of feeling discouraged by the inconsistency, he accepted it as part of the process. He understood that every video had its own behavior and audience. Because of this, he started treating each title like a small test rather than a fixed rule. By the end of that week, He had already changed several more titles using the same method. His channel was still not growing rapidly, but it was no longer completely stuck. There was movement, even if it was slow. And for him, that was enough reason to keep going and learning more. After several weeks of testing and small changes, he began to see his channel in a completely different way. What once felt like a confusing struggle now started to look like a system he could slowly understand. He was no longer just uploading videos and hoping for the best. He was paying attention to details, learning from each result, and adjusting step by step. However, the journey was not always smooth. There were days when nothing seemed to improve at all. Some videos still received very low views even after changing the titles. On those days, he would sit quietly and wonder if he was wasting his time. It was easy to fall back into doubt when results were not clear. But instead of stopping, he reminded himself that not every change would show instant results. He had already seen enough small improvements to know that the method was not useless. It was just slow. That thought helped him stay consistent even when motivation dropped. He also started noticing something else. Some videos responded better than others depending on the topic. Certain subjects naturally had more search variations, which meant keyword changes made a bigger difference. Other topics were more stable and did not change much no matter how he edited the title. This helped him understand that not every video could be treated the same way. Because of this, he became more selective. Instead of changing every title blindly, he began choosing carefully which videos were worth testing. He focused more on content that already had some potential, even if it was small. This made his efforts feel more meaningful and less random. As time passed, a few of his older videos started showing steady improvement. They were not exploding in popularity, but they were slowly climbing in views and impressions. That slow growth felt more real to him than sudden spikes, because it came from consistent changes rather than luck. One afternoon, he noticed something that made him stop for a moment. A video he had updated earlier was now appearing more frequently in suggested content. It was reaching viewers he had never reached before. He checked the analytics again and again to make sure he was not mistaken. The change was real, even if it was gradual. That moment gave him a quiet sense of satisfaction. It was not excitement like before, but something more stable. He finally felt like his efforts were connecting with something real. The idea of changing just one keyword with its synonym no longer felt like a small trick. It felt like a tool he could use carefully to improve visibility. Still, he remained careful not to overestimate it. He understood that this method alone was not the full answer to success. It was just one part of a much bigger picture. Content quality, consistency, and audience interest all still mattered. But this small detail had given him an advantage he did not have before. He also began sharing his thoughts with other small creators online. Without claiming it as a miracle solution, he simply explained what he had observed. Some people found it interesting, while others were unsure. But for him, it was not about convincing anyone. It was about sharing something he had learned through real experience. By the end of that month, his mindset had changed more than his numbers. He was no longer focused only on results. He was focused on improvement. Each video became an opportunity to test something small, learn something new, and refine his approach. Even on slow days, he did not feel completely stuck anymore. There was always something he could adjust, something he could learn, or something he could try differently. That sense of progress, even if small, kept him moving forward. And slowly, without any sudden moment of success, his channel began to feel less like a struggle and more like a journey he finally understood. After months of testing, small changes, and quiet patience, his channel finally began to show steady improvement. It was not the kind of success that happens overnight, but something slower and more meaningful. Each day brought a little more traffic than the previous one, and each week showed a small step forward. For the first time since he started, he did not feel like he was standing still. He still remembered the early days when even a few views felt like a victory. Back then, every upload came with hope mixed with disappointment. Now, things were different. The numbers were not huge yet, but they were consistent. More importantly, they were growing in a natural way that felt earned rather than accidental. He continued using the same simple idea he had discovered earlier. Changing just one keyword in a title with its synonym had become part of his routine. But now he did it with more understanding. He no longer changed words randomly. He thought about how viewers actually searched, what language they might use, and which terms felt more natural in real searches. Over time, this small habit helped him develop a sharper sense of how content discovery worked. He started noticing patterns without even trying too hard. Certain words attracted more attention depending on trends, while others worked better for specific audiences. This made him more confident in making small but meaningful adjustments. One day, he opened his analytics and noticed something that made him pause longer than usual. A few of his older videos were suddenly gaining steady views even though he had not touched them in weeks. They were appearing in search results and suggested sections more often than before. It was not a sudden viral spike, but a slow rise that kept going. He leaned back in his chair and simply watched the numbers update. There was no shock or excitement like before, just a calm understanding that something was finally working in the background. The effort he had put in over time was now showing quiet results. What surprised him most was not the growth itself, but how stable it felt. There were no sudden drops or random spikes. Instead, there was a steady pattern that continued day after day. This gave him confidence that he was moving in the right direction. He also noticed that his mindset had completely changed compared to when he started. Earlier, he used to judge success only by views and likes. Now, he focused more on learning and improvement. Each video became a small experiment rather than a final result. This made the entire process less stressful and more controlled. Even when some videos did not perform well, he no longer felt discouraged for long. He would simply observe, learn, and adjust. That habit of thinking calmly instead of reacting emotionally helped him stay consistent for a longer time than before. As weeks passed, he started getting small messages from viewers as well. Some people appreciated the content, while others asked questions or shared suggestions. These interactions made him realize that real people were actually watching and connecting with his work. That feeling was more valuable to him than numbers alone. He also began helping other small creators who were struggling like he once did. Instead of giving complicated advice, he simply shared what he had learned through experience. Many found it useful because it was simple and practical. He never called it a secret trick or shortcut. To him, it was just careful observation and patience. By this point, his channel had grown enough that it no longer felt invisible. It was still not massive, but it had an audience that was slowly expanding. More videos were getting consistent views, and more content was being discovered naturally. Looking back at his journey, he realized something important. The biggest change was not just in his channel, but in how he approached everything. He learned that small adjustments, when done consistently, can lead to meaningful results over time. There was no magic formula, only attention to detail and patience. On one quiet evening, he uploaded another video just like before. He adjusted one keyword in the title, checked everything once, and then let it go without overthinking. But this time, he did not feel anxious about the result. He simply trusted the process he had built. And for the first time, he understood that success was not a sudden moment. It was a slow path built from small steps, repeated again and again until they finally started to matter.